Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Do you have any roofing needs from the last storm that passed or your roof getting old? Look up K&H Construction. They can help you with your roof. They can help you with whatever project you need, remodeling around the house. Mr. Helms is a local man from Waxahachie, and look them up. I'll have the screen going through this number. Look them up and let them know DV sent you. Today, my very special guest is the Mayor Pro Tem of Midlothian, who is running for re-election, Mr. Clark Wickcliffe. How you doing, sir?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on, sir. I do appreciate when you guys make yourself available to the people. So I thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on.
Mr. Wickcliffe, it looks like this time it's time for running for re-election, and you got a challenger, and you get May as the election. So I wanted to have you on to speak to the people in Midlothian. Can you just give a brief bio for somebody who may not know you?
Clark Wickcliffe, born and raised here in Midlothian. Met my wife in high school here in Midlothian. We raise our kids here, and I operate our small business out of here in Midlothian, and got involved at a unique age. I started serving on the utility advisory board when I was 19. Just always have wanted to serve my community. I love the government in general, learning government. How do we best get people to work together for the betterment of the community? So I got involved in utility advisory board, served on the parks board, and then 2019 got elected for the first time to city council.
I got kids older than you, but I'm just old. I'm old. But what makes you want to keep continuing to serve this community?
It's a special place in my heart. It's where I met my wife. It's where I raised my children. My family has been in Ellis County for multiple generations, going back to the late 1800s, but Midlothian specifically since 1940-ish. Even where I'm recording from now is my great-grandparents' old home. I just have a love for Midlothian, the history of it. My mother and my grandfather used to serve on city council, and when I was a kid, I used to have to go sit through city council meetings. Maybe that's what made me spark an interest in the government side of it. But truthfully, I'm all in on Midlothian. Everything that I do is Midlothian. From helping out in youth sports to running a business here. This is just my hometown. It's a place I love with all my heart and just want to see the best for.
What is the biggest challenge? Because you've been on the council for a while and you're Mayor Pro Tem. From when you started to now, how are the most pressing issues, and which one would you say, just for you, you're not talking for but just for you, what would you say is the most pressing issue facing the city?
Infrastructure and a spot on the stage I would say on the state stage, but really the DFW Metroplex stage, because how funds get divided up from the feds and from the state. Midlothian's kind of always been south of all that growth and not had to play with COG and some of these other agencies that control funds. And now we're having to, because we need the infrastructure. We need the access to the money they have. And it's something that I think is new to the city, because we've always just taken care of ourselves. And now we need that extra help for the infrastructure in this town. And so just having to learn how to start handling that, getting in with those agencies, the people who run them and control them, getting face to face with them, showing them the needs and the real concerns we have on things that are going to only continually get worse if they can't step in and help us also. But I would say infrastructure, always property tax, always trying to mitigate that. But I would say hands down, if you said what's the number one, you can only pick one, it would be specifically roadway infrastructure.
You've been on the council for a while, and I know that the rate has gone down. Midlothian has been really good about that part, but some people are hurting on their property taxes, and they bring up, why aren't you cutting more, and why? So I want you to talk to the people about what you've done since you've been on council on taxes, and where do you stand on them?
When I first ran, my philosophy was we're going to lower the overall taxway through economic growth in the industrial area. I had said we're going to push as much industrial growth towards Venus as possible. And the reason why is when you're up on this escarpment, you don't really see everything out that direction unless you head that direction. So let's go in there. We already had Railport. Let's get in there. Let's have good industrial growth, increase small businesses in our downtown and what we call interloop area to get sales tax coming up, so we can use that to lower the overall ad valorem tax rate. And I think we've done a good job. You see a lot of projects going out there. It's helped us lower our taxes. Sunrider, Sunopta, Google, just to name a few, but some big projects. But I believe there's a balanced approach to the city budget and lowering taxes. I've lowered, and when I say me, I can only speak for me. Obviously, it's a group effort. It takes four of us. But since I've been on council, I've lowered taxes every single year I've been on council, at least the rate. Now, except for COVID. COVID was the only year we didn't lower taxes. We actually did a spending freeze because we weren't really sure, that first lockdown, how everything was going to play out. When I first got on council, the tax rate was around 72 cents. We've got it down to 65 cents. We passed a 10% homestead exemption last year, a 10% homestead exemption this year. We've done a senior exemption and freeze, and we did a disabled exemption and freeze because, Davey, I know you're a veteran. And the state covers disabilities for veterans, but it doesn't for just a person who's disabled who's not a veteran. And so we wanted to make sure that if someone was in an accident, had gotten disabled, they weren't going to be taxed out of their home. So the city of Midlothian implemented their own disabled tax exemption as well. And so to me, I just want to keep going down that path. We set a rate. This is actually something that actually happened. Mike Rogers was on council at the time, and so was past Mayor Richard Reno. We said we're going to get the rate to 65 cents in the next 5 years, and we did it. And we also passed all those exemptions as well. So for me, I want to continue to lower the overall tax rate. This is something above and beyond that I've done with my position on council. I've gone to Austin with tax reform bills. I've met with legislators. I have ideas on how the state can improve on property tax overall, but it's me going down there, not only as an individual, but also in the position that I hold, saying as a councilman of Midlothian, please, state legislator, help us extend or increase the homestead exemption from 20% to 30%. Help us redo our tax system. And those are just some of the things I've done while I've been on council to try to help property taxes.
When it comes to property taxes, is it easier on the budget or on the city when you do like the exemption, like a 10% exemption versus cutting the rate down to, let's say, NNR? Is it different? Does it help the city balance and still give a break to people?
It depends on the philosophy. The exemption is kind of a philosophy conversation of should tax breaks be to everybody, and businesses and all, large industry and small business, or to homesteaded properties. The exemptions are good because that's a tax decrease to somebody whose primary residence is in the city of Midlothian, but you're not giving that same tax break to somebody like Google. And the problem is when we lower the rate, it gives the same tax break to somebody like Google that you as a homeowner are getting. That's one of the reasons why I've been wanting the state to increase the amount that a city can have its own homestead exemption. We're capped at 20. We just hit our cap this year, so we can't go any more than we already at. But if they would increase the homestead exemption that cities could pass to 30%, then I can continue to lower taxes for people's primary residence here in the city, but not giving a large industry user who has already received tax incentives more of a tax break. And it's just a philosophy argument on, are we trying to cut taxes for absolutely everybody, or homesteaded properties or businesses? But I think a healthy mixture of two. I don't think there's a perfect, it's either this one or that one. I think you have to sprinkle them in there because small businesses need tax breaks too. From a guy that has a small business here, the property tax on the building that we operate out of is high, very high. To get success, I think you have to do both.
Now, one of the things that you also deal with is the budget, and you've been dealing with it for years. How have you approached the budget in the last few years? What kind of insight have you gained on it? Do you go at it as let's be as frugal as possible? Is it more of a service thing? Do you lean more to, we got to provide a service? Which way do you lean when you're doing the budget, you personally?
One of the things and there's actually a video from years ago when I gave an interview talking about how I was going to address taxes, and it's still the same to this day. One of the things I always thought is the taxes are broken down into two rates: your debt service and your maintenance and operation. And I had always said we can lower our overall rate by letting the debt service come down as we pay off loans. But in 2017, and there was another one after that, I believe, we passed the bonds. So then as a council member, you get stuck in this spot of, I was going to pay off debt and lower our overall rate, but now I've been told to go build these facilities. And so there's always this, I'm going to say, internal battle of how do we handle this? Depending what department it is, specifically, let's just talk about parks. Parks is one that we've always we're going to maintain them at a very base level. We're not going to have all the fancy bells and whistles until we had phase 2 community park built, and that bond, it forced us to do that stuff. I will tell you my stance on the budget is I fully believe for the city to be successful, it's going to have to use our sales tax dollars and our type A and B accounts to fund things like parks. It's going to have to get away from the general fund budget. For perfect example, the amount of tax revenue the city receives just ad valorem, not including permits and sales tax and everything, we would be at a deficit running the city. And we've been blessed that it's a growing city and the fact of all these housing permits, which has raised revenue. My biggest fear is in the next 10 to 15 years, you are going to see that dry up. We're running out of land. It's not a secret. Everybody knows it. Point to a piece of land, I could probably tell you what it's already approved for. And the city needs to get ready now to start handling how are we going to do out a build out, because the permit revenue is going to decrease. And so to me, I want to see the city start using more of its multiple buckets to fund certain departments inside the city so we can get it out of the general fund bucket.
Now, the budget and the parks, you got a park, there's a park right now in discussions that has been talked about. Do you want to touch on that before we get back on budgets?
Sure. Actually, I think I have the rendering right here on my desk. This has been in process, I would say, for some time, maybe 6 to 8 months. I believe it just went, or I was at the joint meeting. It passed recommendation of the Parks Board. It should be coming before council for final approval. Council has not found or said where the funds to build this park is coming from. So right now it's just a concept. Now, if council passes it, it's going to lead us into the next phase of where the funding is going to come from. You can bond it, you can pay cash for it, or you can use type A or B to pay for it, or maybe some other buckets that we have access to. We have not had those discussions, but I can tell you it's going to have to either be a bond or we're going to have to use one of our other buckets to fund it, because general fund has a little bit of money set aside, but not enough for what I think it's going to take to build this park. They haven't told us a cost, but just
and I want public, please do not hold them to it. I'm just asking for a guesstimate.
I would say 10 million.
Okay.
That's that. The number 15 was thrown out to me the other day by some staff that were having this meeting about this park specifically. And that goes back to how I think we're going to have to fund the budget in the future is if our just philosophy, if the B Corp and A Corp funded this park, that's $15 million the city doesn't have to take debt out on the ad valorem side and doesn't have to take out of our cash reserves. That is 15 more million that, since I don't have to use it to build a park, I can go build 15 million more dollars worth of roads, or I can lower taxes, or I can so on and so on. And so to me, that's where I think the city's going to have to pivot when we talk about future parks.
You're about to go into another budget. The city is always going into the next budget. It's what I've learned in the last 4 or 5 years of covering this. You're going into budget time. It's a little early, but you're going into budget time here soon. What are some of the things that you're seeing, Clark? What are some of the things that you'd like to see in this next year's budget? I know that it's all early. Just saying that you in general, what would you like to see in this next budget? Do we look healthy too?
Yeah, I will say the city of Midlothian has great financials. We have our own policy where we have to keep more than 150 days of reserves. That's not required by the state. That's our policy that the council set, is we want to keep 150 days worth of reserves. We typically bounce between 170 to 200. With that being said, for me personally, I want this budget session to be focused very hard on infrastructure. We've built the city hall, we've built the library, the police station's wrapping up. We think we're going to get the YMCA taken care of. We're almost done finalizing that. So all those projects are done. And I've asked some of our city staff, if you had to build another facility today, what would it be? And we're really good, actually. We think public works is good. We think parks is going to be okay. Mine is, let's hit roadways and sidewalks and connectivity as hard as we can. Let's put all the shiny toys to the side and let's go back to the basics. And we had a $5 million amount that we had set aside that council couldn't agree with on what to do with it this past budget. I want to deploy those funds now. We're halfway through our budgeted year, and whatever we don't get deployed by the end of the year, I want to use to help us lower basically either the tax rate or whatever account we're going to use to spend it on. So we could build $2 more million worth of roads.
I'm sure the city manager has told you, but what would be the amount guesstimate that it would cost to fix all the roads? If you had to pay for it all now, how much would that cost?
I believe it's going to be more than 100 million. And let me say, I'm talking about city roads. I think there's a big problem in understanding what the city controls and doesn't, as a number I heard a few years ago. Now, there's a difference between road rehab and improving roads. We have a 7-year plan on road rehab. We have the roads laid out and on a map and say, we're going to do this section in 2026, this section in 2027. And typically we set aside a dollar amount for these sections. Something I wanted to do the last couple of years is say, hey, if we have the funds, kind of like we did this year, instead of setting $1 million or $1.8 million aside for 2025 roads, let's take the 5 million and hit the next 4 years worth of roads, or 3 years. Let's just go ahead and get these 3 years worth of roads done while we can. I know a lot of the problems is 663. 663 is a state road. We don't have a say over it, but we actually have the money set aside where we could take 663 4 lanes from Kroger to the first entrance of Lawson Farms, but the state won't let us. It's their road. It messes with their funding.
I thought TxDOT would totally let you buy the road or get the road back from them so they didn't have to do it. I'm surprised.
Well, it would still be their road. We would just improve it for them up until that point because it helps our citizens. Same with the 63 exit backing up on the freeway. We have the money and we have the engineered plans ready to go to build a 14th Street exit right now. TxDOT won't let us. I'm not going to say the city doesn't have a role to play in some of this, but truthfully, a lot of time it's us fighting with TxDOT, trying to let them grant access for us to build these improvements.
And you got 1387 too. 1387 isn't as heavily traveled as 663 right now, but it's getting there. There's a whole lot of houses they're building there and around there. And now they're building the Tom Thumb right there on Heritage by Walnut Grove and 1387. That traffic's going to be increased, but that doesn't belong to the city. But that's still going to put a lot on the Walnut Grove does belong to the city. That's going to put
Walnut Grove
on that. So there's a lot of challenges coming up for first responders, for the different departments. Are you guys looking to do raises? What would you like to see there with staffing?
That's interesting. So my whole time on council, we've done pay increases, cost of living adjustments several times. We are struggling from a staffing perspective. We are understaffed. And the problem when we start talking about budgets is 50 to 60% of our budget is payroll. And out of that 50 to 60%, over 60 to 70% is police and fire. We've actually been forced to do it, pay increases anyways, because we've done studies of what other cities are paying, but also in the positions that we've been going out for to try to hire, the people who are coming in are requesting higher than our midpoint. It's almost been everybody that's applied. And so it's forcing us to pay more than what we had originally set the city up for. But this is the problem with all municipalities across the state. In the position, I've met city councilmen and mayors in other cities surrounding us, and we've built a relationship, and I'll ask them about their issues. And it's the same issue. The base pay that people are requesting when they first get hired is higher than what we've all typically budgeted for. But we're also all competing with ourselves. Even when we do the studies, we'll go study Mansfield or another city on what they're paying, adjust our pay to it, if not a little more, and then they'll lose some employees and then they raise their hire. We're constantly in this back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say about pay and staffing, and it depends who you talk to, every department's different. One of the things I've done is I'll pop into the police station unannounced. I pop into the fire stations unannounced. I'll pop down to public work unannounced. I'll go up to employees at events, and I don't wear anything that says city council on. I just look like a normal citizen. I'll start to ask them, what do you like about here? What do you wish they changed? Do you like being an employee of the city? And what I've learned is some of them are going, look, we're getting all this overtime, we're getting all this money, but we're working so much overtime. I would rather not get the pay increase if we could get some help, because I would get to spend more time with my kids on the weekends.
It does burn you out.
Yeah. And I think we've hit that point. There are some that I've talked to where we've hit this point of the pay is not my problem. Time is my problem. Please get more employees. And so I think we're going to always be on this tug of war of balancing pay increase versus getting more staff. And I think this year we're probably going to be more focused on getting more staff.
That's cool. Now, Clark, one of the big things that people bring up is growth. We're heading to the end of the land that we have is pretty much taken up. And you see it all the time. Oh, there's too many houses. There's too much density. You got Goodland building up. I know that's its own thing, but it's also so close to the city that it's going to affect the city. Some people say online, hey, why don't we just stop building? Why are these guys always building? Can you do that? Is that legal? Can you talk about growth and building, stuff like that?
Okay. Yeah. So basically a moratorium on building is illegal. You can't do it. And everybody who's ever posted an article of the city that has done it, if you actually go read it and look into it, you can only do it if you have like a sewer infrastructure issue or the plant can't handle it. And to just be honest, we don't have a sewer issue. We don't have a water issue. And you could argue roadway, but city roadways are technically have capacity. It's the state roadways that don't. So the short answer is no. I'm talking to our attorneys and our legal teams. We can't do it. How I seek growth is I think we have done a lot of encroaching high density down 663. And this isn't just this council or this has been years of an issue of encroaching more and more growth down. And I think what's going to have to take a stance is the city at some point is just going to have to put its foot down and say, no, we're not going to do that. And we have to adjust our plans for that. If you go look at our recent future land use plan, we just changed it. In a lot of areas that had higher density laid out on it, we pulled it out and said, no, we're done. You are not going any further south. 1 acre minimums. That's it. There's some spots. You'll see a case that just got denied at the last council meeting. And I think that's the city finally putting the foot down saying, no, you're going to build to what we have this map laid out at. And how I think the city is going to naturally develop out is the Midlothian Parkway, 287, 67, basically the circle. I always tell everybody, think of it like a tree. I think we're going to have most of our density inside of that circle, and it's going to phase out, and it should phase out because the further you get away, the less infrastructure we have. One of the things I've done on growth too, just by the way, it drove me crazy when I first got elected, and 14th Street's a prime example, is we go build these 4-lane thoroughfares, and then everyone is going, well, why are all these density neighborhoods getting built on it? You can't financially afford to put 1 acre and 2 acre lots on a 4-lane road. One of the things we did is when we redid our future land use plan, that's a lot of the things that I argued for is if you build a 4-lane road there, you're incentivizing high density development. Stop. We can increase roadway capacity. We can do 2-lane concrete instead of asphalt with curb and gutter instead of bar ditch, but quit putting in these 4-lane highways going out to the middle of nowhere and then getting upset that high density developers are coming in because that's how you designed it to be. But one of the things we're also doing right now that I'm really excited about is, and I've been trying to do this for years, is we're rewriting our zoning ordinance. Myself and Ross Weaver have been appointed over that along with some P&Z members, build out development in the town. The future land use plan and the zoning is too, but so is this because it's a base standard of how you have to build. And we're finally going to start doing that ordinance rewrite starting next week.
Yeah. Last question on houses and growth. I was looking at houses recently, and I went to every builder, and I talked to Anna about this. I went to every builder basically in Ellis County looking at houses. And one of the things that I noticed is that some of these builders, they put the houses so close, you can reach out your window and shake your neighbor's hands. Is there something that the city plans to do on it? Is that just where reality is with the land left? Is there legalities against telling them to be so close?
So that's actually in the ordinance, in our base ordinances. It's called our setback requirements. And so that's one of the things when we always talk about zoning and density, it doesn't tell you how far apart you have to set the houses. That's what the ordinances are. And that's actually what I'm referring to that we're about to rewrite. One of the other things that I've been wanting to change for years, and I don't have a problem with this product, but it does create a problem for the city, is the garages that come up and swing and it's right in front of your front door. The reality is not a lot of people park there. It's just the truth. They park on the street. And when you pack a neighborhood full of them and then everyone's parking on the street and you're trying to send fire trucks down, it makes it not a good scenario. So one of the things I've been wanting to do is change the setbacks, change the garage orientation where it's more inviting to park in your driveway and not on the city street. And so that's some of the things we're looking at changing. The last thing I'll say on growth, and this is a huge issue for the whole state, is everything I'm saying the legislator may take away tomorrow. The legislator has a bill that says cities cannot regulate setbacks anymore, which means you could build right on your property line. The state has bills filed that say cities can't have zoning anymore. It's pretty scary. A lot of the times people get mad at the city, but I will tell you since 2019, since I got elected, the legislator constantly handcuffs municipal governments. I've gone to Austin. I've heard some of the reasons why. There are cities that have done things they shouldn't have, but there's an argument on the other side too. You know, no one wants to wake up and have a retail shop built right next door to their house. We have zoning for a reason. And so hopefully the state doesn't get too carried away.
You see, I saw that, and being a transplant, I've been here since this area 14, Texas since 12. I came from that place in California. And what I saw over there is that they're very state heavy. The state tells the schools what to do. The states tell the cities what to do. There's very little control locally. So I truly hope that that bill does not succeed. I normally don't chime in on those things, but I want control locally so that the people closest to us can decide what is good for us. We can decide what is good for us.
Jokingly tell people all the time, it's truly easier to get a hold of a councilman than it is your state legislator or your congressman or anybody else. But two, it's easy to find me, either jalapenos or Kim and Jenny's or Twisted Sister. You're going to find me in lunch in a local restaurant pretty much any day of the week. And I just think it should return back to the local level just because I think it's easier to control on the local level.
There was a vote a few years back in Waxahachie where city council was decided by 1,000 votes split. It was 20 votes separated them. And there what, 40,000 people in Waxahachie? I think we're at 40,000 too, right? Midlothian roughly?
I think we're about 46,000. If the city builds out exactly how it's designed today, it'd be 65 square miles with about 110,000 people.
That's a lot.
It is, but if you look at other cities that are 30 square miles and they have 200,000 people, we can go look at Arlington. That's just assuming those are growth trends on what we think. Typically, the math we run is 3 people per house. Some may have 4, some may have 2. So it's just an estimate. I'll tell you, there for a while, the trend was going to push, especially with all the mud districts, that it was going to push up into the 150, 180s. And that's why we redid our land use map, is we said, no, we have got to get this back down to the 100,000 mark, where it has always been since I can remember.
Bridgewater's a mud. There's been these discussions about muds and PIDs. And can you give a 30,000 foot view of them for the audience and what your thoughts on them are?
Yeah. So basically, the legislator is incentivizing MUDs. Cities have been fighting tooth and nail. And the reason why, and I'll tell you, Bridgewater specifically is a unique MUD because everyone goes, why did the city stack all these houses out here? we didn't want to. We were actually sued into it. We lost our lawsuit and they were granted that many houses. And so again, we were handcuffed. But taking Bridgewater and just looking at the other MUDs, basically, as long as they can build the infrastructure to sustain their development, and again, sustain it inside their property lines. They don't look at the roads that service the developments. They don't look at anything other than water and sewer. If they can sustain it, then they can build as much as they want. Apartments, 20-foot lots, 30-foot lots, townhomes. There's no control. And the state's only made it harder and harder for cities to fight. We have multiple MUDs here in the city of Midlothian. We've been fighting almost all of them, except for the one that I told you we lost the lawsuit. And that lawsuit was back in the early 2000s. It causes a concern for the cities, and this has been our argument to the state, is if a MUD comes in on 500 acres and they can put 6,000 houses or whatever out there, you guys are only looking at this box, but a 2-lane asphalt road is what services that whole neighborhood. And where do they go? They come to Midlothian Parkway. They come to 14th Street. They come to McAlpin. They come to just our streets as a city that we don't get tax money from them to upgrade it. They don't pay impact fees. They don't pay permit fees. They pay nothing, but we have to service all their residents. And this is where cities are going to get in really big trouble. And actually, if you've been watching the council, we've had debate about this for every year I've been on council, is our fire and police service those areas. And there's been a long conversation, and we have it again this budget cycle, on whether or not we should serve what we call the ESD, which is essentially the MUDs. Should our fire and police go respond to a 911 call out there when they're not paying for the service? Technically, the county should have to respond, but we will continue to have that debate. I think there probably will be a day where you will see the city not do that. We're the only city in Ellis County that I'm aware of that services the ESD. Everybody else just contracts with an ambulance service.
I understand that can seem a little crazy to some folks, but it takes money to keep the police fire. Each one of those fire trucks are what, over $100,000 easy?
They're about 1.4 million.
My bad. 1.4 million. Yeah, they're expensive. And those cop cars, all of that costs money. But it's bad that a lot of the buyers don't normally know until they're getting ready to do some paperwork and find out they got an extra bill in that MUD.
There's one in Midlothian that they call them portable package plants. I don't think they're actually portable, but they're basically built off-site and you can reconstruct them on-site. There's one MUD here in town that has 6 package plants. Talk about a smell and environmental hazard, and who's running them? Because right now we don't run ours. TRWD and TRA, or TRWD runs ours. I don't know who's going to run those plants, who's up for maintenance on those plants. The state's got a real problem on their hand, and the fact that they're only making it harder for cities is going to, truthfully, in the next 10 to 15 years, be a problem for Midlothian. Just from a road, put the sewage plants and the fire response and everything else to aside, just the roadway problem. The one MUD on the edge of town, they're estimating a 45,000 population, and it's serviced by 875 and 663.
Oh, man, that's going to be...
Now, it'll take them 20, 30 years to build out to that population, but the truth is when it is done, unless something changes in the future, it's serviced by 2 asphalt roads.
There's a lot of things, and that's why I wanted to have you on and have these candidates on, because Midlothian's at a big changing point. What you guys do right now will affect going into the future big time. So there's a lot of big decisions right now. So it's very important that people get out there and vote and look into the issues, because it's your city. It's your home where you have chosen to buy a home here. You have chosen to be part of the community. And if you don't keep abreast and don't complain when you see the bulldozer carving off some land or something, you didn't pay attention. I could talk to you forever, but we're running out of time. But I did want to touch on one last thing, and that was probably business. Because when I came here, Midlothian kind of was house heavy and not much business. Obviously, that has changed since 2014. What are some of the things that you guys are looking in the future about attracting business? What kind of businesses you want to get in here? Do you want to go back to a little more industry? What's that real quickly?
One, we want to attack small business. It's something we wanted to do for years and just couldn't come to agreements on how to do it. I think that's changing. You see our 4A coming out with a small business promotion grant. We want more small businesses here in town. We have some ideas on how to incentivize them. If they're restaurants, we have talked roughly about community grease traps to lower the cost of startup restaurants. We've talked about in special, basically waiving permit fees for small and startup businesses to try to get more here in town. And that, again, this is all for the small business sector. We want them here. We want Midlothian to be the capital of small business. It was built on, if you look through our history, and we want to get back to that. But the industry, the large industry, has helped us lower our tax base, and we know we need them too. And we have been very hard on what type of industry we go out after. We don't want what people would call dirty manufacturing. We want clean manufacturing. We want high paying jobs. Something that I've always argued for is when a project comes before us, they'll say pays the county average. The county average isn't good enough. And our housing prices are more than the county average. And so one thing that I've always fought is if an industry is coming here and they're going to bring 300 employees or 200 employees, they need to pay above county average. And so you'll see more of that. But again, we want to attack large industry. How we're going to do it, we have the land and the infrastructure built out there in Railport. We've changed how we do. And this is actually something I'm proud of. When I got in, we just did straight 10-year tax statements. Whether you perform to your deal or not, you just got a 10-year tax payment. And again, this is me and other council members, but we went in there and said, this is not fair to the taxpayer. We want all of our agreements to be performance-based. They have to pay on a minimum tax value of X. They have to pay their employees a minimum of X, and they have to have X amount of employees. And if they don't hit all three, their abatement ends. And so we went in and rewrote that to be fair to the citizens and it was performance. Someone would come in and they'd get this 10-year deal and they wouldn't hold up their end, but they still got the full 10 years. And so we've changed that. It's a performance contract. You perform, we'll perform. And so I think how we've tailored our look at industry is going to help get more industry here. That's why I think you've seen a big burst out towards Railport, is just because we've been more industry friendly.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that's going to help everything. That's going to help lower the taxes. That's going to give us more money for infrastructure. It's especially out there, all the infrastructure is already built. So any taxes received out there, we can apply to different parts of the city.
Yeah, no, it'd be good to have some good, because you got 3 hospitals. The houses are in the 6s. I know that's not the average. I think the average is more in the 4s, but a lot of the houses are in the 6s now, 5 and 6s. If you're building, and then they go up if you got land or not. So
yeah, the average sales price in Midlothian it's going to hit 600 faster than I think people think, only because, and I only know this from talking to different industries in the city, is just pure land cost. Land costs used to be about 10 to 20,000 an acre. There's some developers out there now paying 50 to 75,000 an acre before they build the roads and the water lines and so on and so forth. There will be a future where you'll see houses in 6, 7, 8s.
I believe it. I've seen it. There's some that are already 7 and going up. On my show, my guest always gets the last word, so I'll shut up and give you the mic.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. And all I want to say is to the citizens of Midlothian is I'd love to have your vote. I'm young, I'm energetic, I have the energy, I have the knowledge base, I'm experienced. I think Midlothian is at a pivot point where it's going to need somebody with the experience to help get service roads put in in our town, to help get in front of the state, and somebody who knows who our legislator and congressmen are on a personal and professional basis to help represent the best interest of the city of Midlothian. And I just believe in all my heart that I'm that candidate. And so please, when early voting starts, I'd love to have your vote.
Clark, thanks again, Mr. Wickcliffe. Thank you so much again. And that's the cool thing about living locally. You can actually talk to your representatives here. It's a beautiful thing. But Mr. Wickcliffe, thanks again for coming on the show. Can you stick around real quick after?
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, sir.